Right. Oh, I'm on something of a roll. I've also realised the frequency with which I wear headbands and how great a spectacular spectacle storage. Spectacular spectacle storage with Mikey. Look at that. Fucking you wouldn't know they were there, would you? And I fucking definitely probably won't a lot of the time, as you well know. But I'm moving on a little bit, or staying with adaptations of gastrointestinal nitrogen. No, I am staying with. I had to double check my science because I referred to noradrenaline as a hormone. That was correct. Because it's also a neurotransmitter. But the thing is, it's what most people call a stimulant. And they're wrong. But they're also right. And that's where it all gets confusing. Because dopamine, they're monoamines as well, and they're neurohormones. But dopamine and noradrenaline, not adrenaline, noradrenaline, it's very similar to adrenaline, but it's not. Neurotransmission is, how can I put, they're chemical mediators. So they're a chemical which gets released and does something. So insulin is a hormone, gets released when sugars are detected. And all it actually does is release glycolase. It doesn't do anything to the sugar at all. It just releases another fucking chemical. And it's that chemical that converts the sugars to glycogen, where they then are able to go into the muscles and into the liver for storage, for use as an energy source. But that's a hormone. So a hormone gets released into the blood and it acts on an organelle or a receptor. But the thing is, a neurotransmitter is a chemical which is released and acts on a receptor. They're very fucking similar. They're really fucking similar. They're the same sort of thing. So basically, if that's the bottom of the nerve there, and here's the top of the nerve, and the impulse goes along here, for this to happen, you need dopamine here and here. And then it goes, and then something happens. Something happens. So when you talk about stimulus or stimulating in the world of neurology, which is what we are talking about, you refer to an increased amount of activity travelling along a nerve. When you talk about depression, you talk about less neurological activity travelling along a nerve. And when you talk about hallucinogen, you talk about altered, usually in the perceptive end of neurological activity, but you alter. So, what is a painkiller? If you said it was a depressant, you are very correct. It depresses. Depress means to push down. Most people think depression, clinical depression, most people confuse it with sadness, which is low mood. And it gets really fucking confusing because there's many types of depression. There's reactive depression and major depression and clinical depression, all with different names. But then when people say alcohol's a depressant, people go, yeah, it gives you depression. And no. The person who is reliant upon alcohol is usually already suffering from depression. It causes depression. When they talk about depression, it decreases neurological activity, which is why it works as a painkiller. Why people don't feel punches as much when they're pissed and stuff like that. It is fundamentally what people would refer to as a fucking narcotic. But stimulants. So dopamine is a stimulant in a sense, but it works all over the body. It works in your digestive system. It works in the mood centers. It can, when given as a drug, when it's in the blood, it can't cross the blood-brain barrier, but it can work on organs. That's why it can work as a hormone. That's why it can be given as a drug. Levodopa can be given to people with Parkinson's. Poor production of dopamine results in ADHD in one area of the brain, and it results in Parkinson's in another area of the brain. And in the muscles as well. Dopamine is used in your muscles. Dopamine is used in your digestive system. It is a neurotransmitter. Just a neurotransmitter means it enables the transmission to happen. So when it's not there, it doesn't. So that's how antidepressants work. Because they're not technically stimulants. A stimulant would be like a dopamine releaser, like an amphetamine. That's a releaser. An antidepressant is, it can't be thought of as a stimulant. It has the same end result. It stops your brain reuptaking the dopamine after it's released it, because that's what it does. It squirts a load in, and a few of them get through, and the thing happens. What's left, this goes and sucks them all back up again, because you don't need those. But then when they introduce a reuptake inhibitor, it blocks this one's hoover, so it can't hoover them up anymore, so the dopamine stays there. When it's a releaser, it just makes it go. End result's the same. End result is more dopamine that side of the synapse, but the drugs are working differently. But it's basically, that's why you use a stimulant to treat ADHD. A mate of mine asked me that once, and I just simplified it, and I said, think about a system that's very complicated, like a lot of cogs. And if you make that a different cog, it's got a different gear ratio, and it make that one go faster, but that one goes slower. Think of it like that. When this goes up, that goes down, but then that puts that one up, which puts this one down, and then that one makes that one go massive. So if you stimulate this one, you're putting a bigger cog on it, and it makes the machine run differently. And he went, you know what, that'll do. That will fucking do. That I can fucking get on board with. So you just need to increase that one part of it's running too slowly. That's what you treat with a stimulant. A lot of people can't understand, why do you treat ADHD with a stimulant? The confusion is because there's a lot of words in plain English also exist within neurology and mean something different. When we talk about taking a stimulant, yes, speed is a stimulant. It will increase your heart rate. It can, of course it does. Anyone who's taken speed will know that they're lying in bed with their ears going boom, 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 boom all night, and they're breathing through their mouth and stuff. And so that's what we think of as a stimulant. But that is correct. It's just one of its uses. It's one thing that it can do. But when you talk about a stimulant in terms of neurology, you're talking about increasing activity. So technically, you could make a drug which just creates phantom pain if you wanted. It's the opposite of a painkiller. I'm sure that's fucking theoretically possible. I'm going to go out on a limb and just say it is. Just by increasing the action of potassium in the spinothalamic tract. There you go. You could probably just generate phantom pain. You could probably make a pill that would do that, because all you need to do with a psychotropic drug is increase activity in a gland or increase the sensitivity of a receptor. Some drugs do that. It will just amplify the signal. So when this goes, instead of going, yee-haw, this one goes, yee-haw. You can make things have a higher response. I'm saying all this sort of stuff because I want to explain exaggerated responses to pain and exaggerated responses to pain, to emotional reflex. So, low stimulus environments, when people are taking the piss and someone takes it personally and starts crying. And what happens is everyone will turn around and start fucking laughing at them for being such a pussy. And, stronger people learn that, and they learn to mask all that shit. And thus starts the fucking problems of burying our shit in our subconsciouses. But the fact is, when you're actually going through it, it's fucking god-awfully fucking horrible. And then people are laughing at you on top of it. And it adds to that self-loathing fucking, why is this so shit? And all that sort of stuff. But it's, I'm getting quite scientifical and saying that there are physical elements of, that are occurring within biological structures. Physical structures, a thing that releases something. If it releases a chemical that makes a good thing happen, now it's too small, so it can't release enough. So how do you now make it bigger? How do you now tell a microlized fucking infinitesimally small organelle within the brain to do something more or to be bigger than it is when it has completed its genetic programming? But then that affects your mood, and your mood is always something that people think you've just got control over just by putting yourself together and getting over it and don't worrying about it and all of those things. And yes, they do work, and yes, we can all put ourselves together. But I think it's just, people just please stop being so hostile to sensitive people, because it's not real to you, because you have an objective stance on everybody else's emotions, which is borderline psychopathy. When you're not affected by the emotions of others. And that's, we often talk about a narcissistic society. I'm a fucking narcissist. I put my fucking hand up to it. Anyone who takes a selfie is a fucking narcissist of sorts. Any kind of, that's where we've all got twisted, because we all need a sense of ego, a sense of who we are, to maintain our cognitive awareness, to maintain our cognitive function and our sense of self and our ability to exist and function in and around people. That's what I've learned. I came very close to rejecting that idea of myself, so I know I have faced very closely the destruction of the ego and know how that physically feels. And it's not very nice at all, I can tell you. I wouldn't fucking advise it. But yeah, a bit more. I bet you wish your science lessons at school were like this. I'd love to be taught by a science teacher like me, some fucking bearded twatball in bright colours who swears a lot. I'd be like, yeah, let me listen to him.